even restreams. Like, screw this guy. This story sucks.
You put restream
Oh
on
man.
tilt. You put the internet said we ain't dealing with this today.
Well, listen, long story short is I really just wanted to joke around with Tommy all weekend and just make it a point to make his stake horses in his stable jealous. So I made it to where it looked like Tommy was my stake horse and he'd back me in anything. Well, like 50 people private messaging me trying to get games and trying to message me all across to fly to them and play them because Tommy's got money to burn. And
Well, I mean, if you're taking signups, I'll come to you.
you
Play
can't
some
win.
even 10 ball.
You can't win. I've watched you play.
That's probably true. Let's bet it up.
There's only one way to find out. I'm assuming you're going to be there in South Carolina.
I will not be in South Carolina. I'm going to be in Vegas next week, and then I'm going to the U.S. Open, and then I'm going to Michigan, and then I'm going to spend some time with the wife. And then we're going to Mexico, and then we're going to Norfolk, and then we're going to Puerto Rico, and then we're going to London. So I got enough traveling. I don't need another one.
Dang, Nate. I mean, dang.
And it's all from playing chumps like you.
I mean,
Demetrius said he's next after Nate's done.
I said no. I'm staying out of this.
It's just gonna be a tag
I'm super
team.
jealous. I'm super jealous now.
All that podcast money, you know.
Yeah.
all that $35 I'm making a year. I'll go straight into travel.
Yeah, bring in the
Pretty nice.
Well, all it was a joke turned into something that everybody all of a sudden thought that I was staked, and a joke went too far because now I got way too many messages that I'm not responding to.
Well, you're an even bigger deal than what we thought, and we didn't think you were a very big deal. So,
oh Lord,
we got to bust you a little bit, right?
I mean, yeah, I got to hang out with Mike for 8 days and not only put him on tilt via the internet, but really put him on tilt in person. So it was a successful trip to the Texas Open.
It's true.
Not bad. Yeah. Not bad. So I guess we're here for another week of the podcast. We got Brady Bunch style Demetrius right here. We got Molina Mike right here. And we got the great Dominic Dunn down here. What's going on, everybody?
Fedor said he wants next, buddy. Look at him. Even he's chomping at the bits to get a piece of dum-dum.
Fedor can get played. I'll take a little spot. Nothing crazy, just the last 2, and I'll try him some 10 ball. And I want the first break.
I think you're live. You know, you got a chance.
How high can we bet? On behalf of Fedor, how high can we bet?
I mean, I don't know. Fedor, you know, he's kind of cooled down a little bit. Like in the last 10, 12 hours, has he really popped anything off significant?
his stock's going down.
You know what? I saw a video. Actually, I think Sharik Sayad posted a video of Griff's, and he was playing somebody, I think, at Griff's last night. So it's possible.
Well, yeah.
Fedor, how much you make last night? Put Demetrius in his place. Let him know you made like $50,000.
Didn't this flight just land? Would he get off the plane and just screw the cues together?
I think he still had them put together on the flight. Yeah, he just walked around with a full one-piece cue. Just who wants to play? Who wants to play?
Did y'all see his TikTok video?
300.
I did. That break. That was cute.
He's a TikTok star now.
Yeah.
Him and Jennifer Beretta are like rocking it.
I was about to say, yeah, he's taking a page out of Beretta's book there.
I'll tell you what, like on a serious note, like
I like Jen's content. I do.
Oh my God, her content is amazing. Like when she's walking around in the dress and running out from everywhere, like that is fantastic. I just like something about that just really makes me happy. It's just great.
Oh, she does a great job.
Hopefully Nate's wife doesn't watch this podcast.
It's all right. We're getting divorced. You heard it here first, folks. No, not really.
Breaking news.
Not really. So I guess you two are there, Mike and Dom. So Mike, why don't you tell us what was it like in the venue?
Man, you know, I've been going to Texas Open now for I don't know, like 6 or 7 years probably, and which is not a lot of time, but It's by far the biggest Texas Open that I've been to, and from a number of different standpoints, from the depth of the field, the quality of talent, the prize pool, because the Calcutta was, I think, like 100 and almost 113,000 just in the first Calcutta alone, which is crazy. Which we enjoy the action, but man, I was getting ready for Vegas and everything else. My bankroll wasn't quite prepared for that. But no, we saw Shane go and steamroll. We saw Dennis go back to his Dennis one pocket self, and I was
Isn't it
actually
crazy
very
to see that
surprised.
the two people who are playing more than anybody else are the two people that snap it off? Isn't that weird how that works out?
It's kind of funny, right? Yeah, you would think. Are we going to talk about that, by the way? Is that are we going to transition into that Corey post at some point? 'Cause I hope so.
Oh yeah, we will. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, but no, it was a stacked field, and really the biggest takeaway that I had, number one, besides the obvious of Shane and Dennis, was seeing these guys who I consider one pocket players play rotation at a very high level on 4.5-inch pockets. Scott Frost
Tony made it
really
very
should
deep
have.
run.
Tony beat John Moore, who John's playing as good as anyone. He beat, or I think he gave Jesus help. I don't remember if he beat Jesus or not, but oh no, he did. He did. He ran out the last four to beat him. Yeah, which are guys who I consider, high level rotation players. Scott should have beaten Ignacio Hill. If it wasn't for a hung 7-ball. Chip gave Sky all he could handle. I just thought that was great, man. I really enjoyed it. I love seeing 9-ball like that when it's competitive and it really is wide open. So it was fantastic event from start to finish.
Yeah. Dom, what'd you think? The first time you actually were a person in the room.
Yeah, I thought the Texas stuff was great. I mean, it was not a huge venue, so you were pretty up close and personal with everybody. You know, at any given point. I mean, Mike was standing next to Nike a lot, obviously, because that's where he was sitting. But I mean, you're sitting around all these stars that travel all over, and it was a good time. There was some hill matches which were awesome, and like Tony had a really good rotation run. I enjoyed that. It was nice. It was 40,000.
Yeah, your internet sucks, Dom.
Yeah, your audio is horrible, buddy.
All right.
Yeah, try leaving out and coming back in. That might help it out.
Yep.
So, Demetrius, did you get to watch any of it? You said you were traveling this weekend. Where were you at?
Well, that was a family trip.
Okay.
Anyway, my first chance I was just more following along the brackets. You know, I'm rooting for my horses. We got a little Chris here in the chat. Shout out. And then, of course, Josh Burble was down there. So I was kind of rooting Josh on, and then just kind of keeping up on the brackets and watching. And yeah, that was the first thing that struck me is how big this event has grown. I didn't go this year. I had a boot camp. I was training pool last week and again this week. But I think that in terms of domestic tournaments that I can't miss, I've always had Turning Stone, Derby, and the U.S. Open have been kind of my can't miss events. But I think after seeing this year, I think the Texas Open is now it's going to be right there. I might even put it, higher. Right now, it's even higher than the Turning Stone in my mind. It's kind of like right behind the U.S. Open and Derby. I think the Texas Open is kind of the next must hit. And in terms of domestic competition, I think Derby and then the Texas Open is kind of like, you got one pocket, you got 9-ball, you got monster fields, you got international competition, but you've also got a lot of national level players to where, you might make it a ways in before you don't always have to be playing an elite, international player every round. So
if Corey had it his way, you'd never have to, right?
Well, we'll get there.
So, I mean, this is, I don't know, was this field tougher than the Derby City? I mean, it's a very small list, but like the Derby, the last time we saw the Derby, Fedor wasn't allowed in it, and Eklund wasn't allowed in it. I mean, I guess neither one of them were in this field either, but like,
I think that
the top end players. I mean, who wasn't there besides those two?
The difference, though, with Derby is that you've got 500 player fields, and you've got a lot of domestic players that maybe can't play that great run out pool, but they like to play one pocket, or they like to play banks and the kind of the games where they get more turns. And plus, the other thing about Derby is that you've got a lot of players that just want to go watch, but it almost costs barely any more money to play than it does to watch. So you've got just these huge fields where, if you look, I would say that the top 100 is probably pretty similar, but I think that you've got a little bit more, a few more softer players, a little bit deeper. So if you're above average, you can make it a little further into Derby before you start really getting tested. And I just think there's a little bit more dead money and a little bit easier. I think Derby is a little softer on the bottom side, but I think on the top side they're pretty neck and neck.
Yeah, and now that I say that, I mean, I could come up with a bunch of players that aren't there. The filler, Josh wasn't there, Albin wasn't there. Although Albin, I don't think ever really goes to Derby, but there's a few players. But I'm telling you what, man, looking at this field was brutal. This field was absolutely stacked. The final 64 players are all just insanely high. I mean, it was an awesome field. It was an awesome turnout. I guess let's talk about the one pocket first. Shane again, man. How? When we're talking about these top 5 lists, and we got Shane Van Boning, who makes almost nobody's, yet whenever he plays in one of these, he wins it or takes top 3. So he ends up 3rd place again. Is it crazy to think that he might actually be a top 5 player if he actually cared about the game? What do you think, Mike? Man. We'll start with you there. So you're kind of putting these videos together.
Yeah, I think that it goes. He kind of has that Tony Chohan kind of vibe to him, where it's about how engaged Shane is, and that's what I mean. Like, if Shane is engaged in the tournament and engaged in one pocket and cares, then yeah, he's a threat, because he runs balls so well, and he does have enough of an understanding of the game to be able to hang with movers, right? But then you saw him go and play Josh Roberts, and Josh just really outmoved him because he wasn't going to outshoot him. Josh had a game plan from the very beginning and stuck to it, and really just played that cat and mouse game with Shane very, very well. But I don't know if I can consider Shane a top 5 one pocket player, but I definitely consider him a top 10. I think it's just a matter of where you put Alex in the grand scheme of things today. And this is the thing, like I've been asking guys, give me your top 5 today, and I'm gonna kind of like start a little bit of shit here, but I don't consider Alex Pagulayan a top 5 one pocket player today. He's a shell of himself. His cue ball is all over the place, and he's not running balls nearly the way he used to. Now, pre-COVID, for me, Alex was number 1, and he's a number 1 for a lot of players. But I've seen it in Des Moines. I've seen it in Texas. I saw it at Buffalo's now. He's got a month to get ready for Tony, but I can promise you one thing. If they play today, Tony runs over Alex. Now, he can go and find a stroke in the middle of that set, but Alex is not the same Alex that we're used to seeing at all. So, but yeah, I mean, Dennis was just masterful. I mean, that was my takeaway from the whole thing. Dennis is back. Dennis is back being that, and I think he took the number 1 spot for me this week, as far as being the best one pocket player, because he's as sharp as ever. He makes it look like he's playing on a valley, and he's just, Dennis is just cold blooded. It doesn't matter. The moment doesn't faze Dennis at all. It doesn't matter if he's playing the first, like he's playing the finals like he's playing the first round, with that same kind of way of moving around the table. So I don't know.
I mean, that's a pretty big statement to make there. It is. When I did my top 5 list, what I said was, I don't know if it's Dennis or it's Alex, but I have to see Alex get knocked out before I take it away from him. I don't know if I stand behind that statement today. So, I mean, Demetrius, what's your thoughts on that? Where do you think Alex has fallen into the pantheon of one pocket players right now?
Yeah, I think that Mike brings up a really good point with Shane and engagement. You'd almost say that it kind of comes down to 3 things that determine how good somebody is at one pocket. You've got their moving game, but then you've got their striking game, and then you've got their desire and their engagement, right? So you've got a guy like Filler, right, who beat Chohan last year, and he doesn't have the depth of moving knowledge, but he moves okay, but he had a lot of fire, and he's one of the best strikers in the world. And you put that together, it takes in order to have a guy out move Filler, he better not only move good, but he better be super hungry and ready to strike and play really well. The problem with so looking at Shane, for sure Shane can strike as well as anyone, and then then the question is who really has that big of a moving edge to make up for Shane's striking edge, and not that many people do. And then it comes down to what Mike said, which is if Shane's not engaged, then guys like Justin Hall and Josh Roberts and Tony Chohan, they could definitely outplay him if he's not ready for that. But if he's coming in there ready to go to war, like if Shane were to play best of 3, best of 5 sets to 10 against Chohan, and he was ready for war and he was playing one pocket and engaged, it's like I just don't know that Tony moves that. I know, well, that's a tough one. Tony does move so good. But anyway, but my point is that I think that if Shane was ready to bring it, I think that he's right there knocking on the door of the top 5. When you look at Alex, I agree. Alex was always my favorite, but look at all 3 of those things. First of all, his striking, like Mike said, I saw it happen. It's sad 2-3 years ago when he was wearing glasses at these tournaments and starting to kind of miss hills against Shaw a couple times. And just, you started seeing a little cracks in the armor a little bit. And over the last, couple of years, Alex has lost, and he's a great player. He's always been going to be one of my favorite players of all time, but I don't think he's on top of his striking game. And then the problem with that is then it impacts his confidence and his engagement may not be quite as high. So you look at it, it's like he's just hard to say. He's not quite in his heyday. And yeah, he moves great and he competes great, but when you're not at 100% and it's hard to compete the same way as a guy like Filler would when he knows it's on. So anyway, I think Alex has slipped a little bit, and I don't look at it like I hate to be critical. I mean, what we're saying is he may not any longer after a 10 or 15 year domination. He may not be the number 1 guy in the world. Like if that's criticism, that's pretty reasonable criticism,
And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to him. Like
yeah.
I'm like, and who knows? I mean, he was essentially gone for the game for what, a year and a half, because of COVID. So it's not to say that Alex can't get back to that level, but it just seems like every one pocket tournament that I've been watching from Alex, like he's held to that number 1 player in the world standard. I'm sorry,
he's always an open
right?
bid. He's always
So he's always going to be a blind bid. And he was this year, but it's just I don't see it right now. I don't see it. I see his cue ball get away from him far too much. I see him sell out shots that I can't believe I'm seeing Alex's ball get there. Like it's unbelievable because we're used to seeing such precision from him, and I think Tony's playing better than ever. And I had a conversation with Tony whenever I was there at the Open, and I said, man, 9-8's pretty interesting right now. I said, I'm surprised y'all were able to go and get it. And he said, Alex owed it to me. Alex owed me 9-8 because of me playing him before. And he said, and you know what? If I win 9-8, I'll play him even. And then after that, if I win even, then I'll take 9-8 from Dennis.
I gotta cut you off there first because he was on the podcast last week, and what he said was, I'm gonna play Alex 9-8, and if I win, I'm gonna play Dennis 9-8.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm gonna give Alex a rematch even. And if he wins against Dennis 9-8, he's going to give him a rematch. It's just, but he's right though, because really Tony's the only one outside of these ridiculous money games where they're giving up like 15-4 kind of spots or 16-4 kind of spots where they're chasing money and in a really bad game and got to be, basically playing flawless. Tony's the only one to give him play. So I think Tony's absolutely right that they do owe him, But if I just look at it today, and this is what I kept on telling guys, like today, I talked to Billy and Cardona, which he's a legend in the game, and asked his opinion on it. And I think everybody still says Alex because Alex is Alex, right? We're used to seeing such greatness from him, and that's whenever me and Joey were talking about it, that's how I included him in my top 5. But then if I just take the last, year, if I just take this year, right? I can't do it. I cannot get him there. Like I've seen Chip go and play better and better. I've seen Scott go and play better and better. When Justin Hall is actually playing a tournament, I've seen him go and play better and better. Oh, by the way, Dennis lost a step, but now he looks like he's back. So and Tony, whenever Tony was giving Chip a spot, Tony looked sharp. But when he was in Louisiana and he started squeezing him, that's a new Tony. That's a different kind of player than I've ever seen. And
I don't know, man. I can't.
The only
I couldn't get there. You know.
the only thing about Alex, though, to be fair, is I've been, I mean, to say that a guy might not be number one in the world, that's not it's hard to take that as harsh criticism. I mean, it's just only one person can be there. But the thing about Alex is, you're talking about tournaments with short sets and whatever. You lock the door on the guy in the cage and you put him in a race to 40, or you put him in a best of 5 races to 10. And
Yep.
Alex, I don't know. He's tough to beat, too. So it's like
you don't want to wake him up. I can promise you
Yeah.
that. You don't want him to find that gear while you're in day one, at the end of day one, because then he's gonna really just torture you the rest of the 3 days, And I agree with you 1,000%, Demetrius. And it's possible, and that's the reason why, when I say it, I'm just saying it from what I'm watching today. But I do think he can get there, right? Because he's Alex, and he's always gotten there. He's always figured it out. He's been the number one player in the world in one pocket for, as far as a lot of people's opinion, for so long.
When was the last time this was even a debate?
Yeah, no, it's been years and years.
So I think it's like, I almost feel like with some players, it's real close to the surface where they don't have to drill deep. It's like every set, they're just like Dennis. He's just flowing every set. Alex, I feel like it's not quite as quick to come to him. Like he has to dig a little deeper, and it's not right at the surface. And if he's playing set after set, there's going to be sets where he's not able to bring it. But I think if it's a long cage match, I think he's going to dig pretty deep, and I expect him to do well. Now, one thing I liked about this tournament, though, was it was race to 5 on the one pocket. And I think compare that to Derby, race to 3. I really think race to 5 makes a huge difference in terms of letting the better players earn their way to the final rounds. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, what do you think about playing on 4.5 though? Because I agree, the race to 5, the cream should rise to the top, right? But I think it's kind of offsetting when you play on 4.5. What do you think? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think Derby is 4.5, but what happens is that those tables play a little soft in the, and then as you start playing on them by day 2, day 3, they start playing a little bit normal, and by day 4, 5, and 6, they start playing a little stingy, to where I think they're standard 4.5, but they're like at that point they're kind of broken in, and they don't polish the balls the whole time at Derby. So by day 4 or 5, the balls are really gritty and they don't just flow in. Am I wrong on that, or is that? I mean, that's my experience. So I think that 4.5 by itself, I wasn't at the Texas Open where the ball's like freshly polished, just gliding in from everywhere.
Yeah, they were cleaned all their balls are cleaned every single night. And there's 18 tables, and they use a diamond ball polisher, and they're beautiful.
So I still like it because with the race to 5, if you have tight pockets and gritty balls, the length of those sets is going to double, and you're not going to be able to run a tournament in that short of a time period with that many players. So if I have a choice between tight pockets race to, I guess that's an interesting question. Would you rather see tight pockets race to 3 or 4.5 race to 5? I don't know, man. I could be talked into either way. Either way, it's a good match.
Well, I guess before we continue on this, I want to give a huge shout out to Josh Arias. Thank you very much. He sent some stars, so thank you very much. But I guess you can't really do anything about the pocket size, right? Because what's the perfect size for an event like this for a one pocket? Like 4 1/8, probably 4 something, right. Somewhere between 4 and 4 1/8. But yes. It's not like you can bring in a table mechanic the night before the 9-ball starts and switch it back to 4.5. So do you want to play a 9? Yeah, do you want to play a 9-ball event on 4 1/8? I'm sure some people in that field do, but it's pretty brutal. The only place I could see being able to do that, what you're talking about, is maybe Buffalo's, because they have their big one pocket events.
The only other thing you could do is you could have
9-ball too.
You could have 2 tables that are tighter, and then you could play. You could just tell people, once we get down to the final 4 in the one pocket, and once we get down to the final 4 of the 9-ball, we're going to switch to tighter equipment for the final rounds. Because otherwise, you slow everything down way too much.
No, but unless as long as you don't use those 2 tables the rest of the time, you can only use those tables once you get down to the final 8, right? Because you can't use them in addition along the way. Because but then you're just putting some people. You're switching between 4 1/8 to 4.5 and back and forth. I think it's. I just think it's. I just don't think it's any good.
I don't think that's realistic because you can't play on a different equipment than what you got there playing on, and that's my standpoint on it. But playing on 4.5 doesn't take away from the great event. It doesn't take away from Shane getting third again after going and snapping off Des Moines. It doesn't take away from Dennis's just basically making it look super easy, right? It doesn't take away from any of it. I just think that if you look at just from a pure one pocket standpoint, more players would go and say that they would rather go and play on a tighter table. But I mean, all in all, like, listen, Race to Five was fantastic. We got to see a lot of like really good matches, and me and Dom were fortunate enough to where we were there, and we got to sweat matches that were not just on the TV table, because there was just the field was so deep that there was fantastic matches everywhere. And if I'm gonna go and criticize anything, it would be the days of having one camera on a stream are just ridiculous and unnecessary. There's more than enough avenues available to be able to set up another camera somewhere else, so that way the fans can go and enjoy multiple tables, at the very minimum too. At the very minimum too.
Even if there's no
Um,
commentary, even if there's just no commentary, just an unmanned stream where you're streaming 6, 5, 4, 6 tables. I mean, there was a match that nobody. I think Mikey. I think you recorded it actually. Nike was down 8-4, and comes back and makes it hill.
with
Like,
Dennis, yeah,
that was a
even the nine
sick
ball.
match. Sick match. It was. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
incredible. I wanted to touch on the Alex thing. I talked to Alex while I was there, and I think Mike's video he posted about his top 5 kind of alluded to what he thought about his own game at that time. But
He
said right
doesn't
now
think in there.
he's not ready right now. He says, but he's like, watch, I'm going to be running. He'll be training. He's going to be hitting balls. He's going to do exactly what he does because there's a motivation and there's reason. I mean, there's 75K on the line, and there's going to be a lot more, I'm sure, by the time it goes. But
Yeah, no.
he'll be prepared.
Well, it depends. If Alex starts playing good,
If he gets ready,
because then
if he gets ready.
because then his side is gonna love it. But the caveat is he has to be playing good, because the money's up now, right, for the 150, but it could be a lot more, a ton more, because Tony's side really loves Tony's side. They love it even, and I guarantee you they love it getting 9-8. So but the thing is that if Alex is playing bad, they're gonna love it even more. But Alex has got one of from what I understand, Alex has one of the best backers in the industry with one of the deepest pockets. So money's not the problem at all.
Confidence.
So, well, yeah, but I mean, they're not stupid either, But Alex has to be playing like he did before COVID.
Yeah. So I guess let me jump in for the pocket size, because I think if there's one thing that is so you can't run a tournament like this with the same size pockets between your 9-ball and your 1 pocket and have the 2 games really be highlighted as best they can. Because what I saw, and I didn't watch a ton of the 1 pocket, I probably watched about 6 or 7 hours by the end of it. I saw the matches I wanted to see, and it was, hey, don't. Anyways, but what I saw was once a player got a shot, that's it. They ran 8 and out, they ran 9 and out, they ran 5 and out, whatever they needed, they ran it out. Those 4.5-inch pockets. I mean, once you get a look at the table, and I think a lot of it is like those 4 1/8 pockets. When you have those really close ones, you're shooting balls out of the stack. When you have just that little bit, that 1/2 inch more of the pocket nearly, and you're able to see, a 1/2 inch more of the pocket, or even, a 1/4 inch more of the pocket, that makes a lot of balls in the stack go that wouldn't go on 4 1/8. And just having that pocket available, that opens up a lot of, those shots into the pocket where you crack the cluster and everything's wide open from there. It's a
completely different game. It's a completely different game, because when you're leaving little teasers out there, they ain't shooting them like that on 4 1/8 or 4-inch pockets like they are on 4 1/2.
In fact,
it's a
they'll leave
whole
them just because
different
they know
ball
you're
game.
not stupid enough to play them.
Right.
Yeah.
You also got to
Tony
remember that
4 1/8. You'll see.
You got to also remember that these are local businesses that, I mean, to have them have installed 4 1/4 or 4 1/8, they're going to have that equipment for the rest of the year.
Can't do it. You just can't do it.
And the locals are going to want to make more than 2 balls in a row. That's just league and all that other. But whatever event that we bring tables to, such as Derby, match rooms, obviously, and Predator events that bring the tables, that supply them, I mean, those can automatically become 4 1/4. I think the way our industry is going with all the money matches we have, the exposure that we're getting as the industry right now, I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing 15-ball rotation. We start seeing tighter pockets. It's going to have to be. You'll have to.
There, not anytime soon. No,
we're going to have to change
leave that for
pocket size.
leave that for. What?
Well,
no,
maybe,
no
maybe
one's
they
going to go
can,
and have a 15-ball rotation tournament.
maybe they can start
No,
playing
not
that in
tournament.
Europe.
Like action.
In the
Man, how
U.S.,
much
I
do
think
you
we
wanna
should
see?
probably remove a ball. I think we should start playing 8-ball, but rotation style.
I like that.
I think the U.S. players should only have to make we should just get the 8-ball. Okay. That's where we're going, right? Isn't that what the
I
whole
think that's
tweet?
a good transition there, Demetrius, to go and bring up old Corey's post.
Well, why don't we actually? Because we can talk about the 9-ball portion of this afterwards, and I guess I hope I don't have to play devil's advocate on this to stand up for Corey, but I know exactly how at least one of you feel, and I have to assume that Mike, your shadow is going to fall, in line with what you think.
Well, I commented before
what?
Mike ever posted.
I love you, Dom. So, Demetrius, why don't you get us started with it? Well, I guess let me actually give the backstory. I really should do that. So, Corey Deuel made the post. Corey Deuel, one of the, you certainly can't make a top 10 list of the greatest U.S. players of all time, probably without him being on it. I don't see how you can do that. So I guess he made a post basically saying, well, why don't we just segregate out? I think it started out with segregating out all of the Europeans and Asian players into one side of the bracket, the U.S. players into the other side of the bracket. And what this does is it guarantees that there's going to be a U.S. versus the world final. Later on, he said, well, why don't you just take the top 5 from Europe and then the top 5 from the U.S. and just segregate those, get those guys separated from each other, and then do a random draw for the rest of the X amount of players. First off, that doesn't work because you can get rid of the top 20 European players, and 21 through 25 are still going to be better than number 3 through 5 in the U.S. So that still doesn't work. So, anyways.
Hold on. The real backstory is this, and Dom was there, and I showed up right whenever all the drama was there. Right. This is
nobody knows this.
Yeah, this is pre-Facebook post. Okay.
Right.
So I'm getting dropped off at the car. I'm sorry, in front of the venue, and I just hear Corey going off, like right in front of the venue. And I like Corey, for the record. I do. I really enjoy Corey. And then I see it's Omar and Corey, which Omar considered one of the nicest guys in pool. Personally, I just do. And everyone that I've always talked to had nothing but great things to go and say. So I was really surprised. They're getting into it, and Dom will go and tell you that backstory. But at the end of it, after they're yelling and Dennis is holding Omar back, right? And I don't think it was ever going to come to blows. But I think that, they were right there. They were right there in each other's face. At the end of it, Corey storming off. And I don't want to quote him, right? But it more or less, he said, you come over here to our country and you play in all of our tournaments and you take all of our money and it's complete BS. More or less, that's what he said. Now, mind you, there's Filipinos outside. There's Omar, who's not American, outside. So for Corey to kind of say that and walk off was kind of like, I couldn't believe it.
He said this to Omar, right?
Yes, he said that to Omar as he's walking away. You come into our country, you play all of our tournaments, you take all of our money, it's complete BS, and then walks away. Now you fast forward an hour and a half. Yeah, so Dom will tell you what happened leading up to that.
It was just more like, so they had a match. Corey was leading in the match. I don't know if maybe it was 9th through 12th or something to get in there, which is a different payday on the bracket. And Corey was shooting like a 6 or a 7 ball to get out, and Omar decided to clean off his shaft while Corey was shooting. And instead of Corey getting up, he missed the ball and blamed him and just basically, why didn't you just throw the towel in the middle of the air at that point? I was just mad because he got sharked, and Omar's like, dude, I would never do that. And he's just basically saying, I'm a nice guy, and Corey, let him know that he didn't think he was a nice guy, and words were exchanged. And then Mike comes strolling up with a backpack and his cue case, and
what is going on?
He just showed up for the first date with a confused look. And you had Scott Frost out there, Tony out there, and all that good stuff. And it was just some good drama. I think any drama is good for the industry personally. So, but yeah.
Fedor.
Then awesome. 2 hours later, you got Corey make a post about how he needed to practice more, and he worded that differently. He worded it about putting foreigners in different brackets. What was more interesting about anything is I don't think you've ever seen this, and I know I haven't. Have you ever seen a person respond to every single person that's commented on their post? Ever?
Yeah.
Corey may have done
Corey
that.
replied to every single person that responded to the post.
He hadn't been on Facebook in like 2 years up until that point, had he? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh,
that's the backstory. Basically, Corey thinks he's sharked. The fact that he dogged the ball, maybe he was sharked because of it. Maybe he just dogged it and needed someone to blame. Who knows? I know that everybody in their world has, at one point in time in their career, looked at somebody and said, I missed the shot because of you. Guilty. I mean, I'm sure everybody can say that they have at one point in time. Whether or not it was real, who knows? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that it was. Let's talk about the actual content of his post. So, Demetrius, why don't you get us started? Do you think that this is a real idea, or do you think that we should basically just chalk it up to being a sore loser?
Well, I think it's a funny question because you've got different. Nobody even has a united vision of what pool should be, where it should go. There's no organization that's really, Matchroom is trying to step up and do some of this, but there's not like a universal body of pool. So you've got the tournament promoters, you've got the sponsors, you've got the players, you've got the spectators, you've got the aspiring players. There's so many different groups that all kind of want what they all want. In the end, I think that the general consensus is always going to be that when we see top tournaments, we want to see top players even up, fighting each other to see who's best. If there's a place for amateur tournaments and if there's a place for lower level tournaments or Fargo capped or handicapped, I think that's fine. But when we come to our main events, I think that we should see open play. Now, the only question that I would have then, and I'd be interested to hear your other thoughts, is I do know that, like, for example, in Minnesota, at our local level, people don't like it when we are having our local tournaments, and then you got these, out of town regional pros from other regions that swoop in and try to just gobble up the prize money. Like, for example, in our region, if we had somebody that was from the other side of the country, like say Josh Roberts, and he just flies up and starts playing in local bar table events in Minnesota and Wisconsin and just kind of running around robbing amateur tournaments, at some point they'd be like, hey, why don't you play in the pro tournaments or your own region? We don't want to just kind of get heisted by these out-of-towners that happen to be way better than us. And so that's why they have Fargo caps or whatever. So I guess I can understand how a U.S. player like Corey might feel that the U.S. pool has become kind of like a region where the international players are just coming in and stomping on our money. The only thing I would say is the only question mark would be, is there a place for domestic pool tournaments that are U.S. only? Like, hey, you got to be a U.S. player to play, like a U.S. tour, and then also some international event. Hang on. So my overall feeling, though, is when it comes to pros, I don't like any handicaps. I don't like any split brackets. I even really don't like seeded tournaments. If I go play the best in the world, I want a fair chance against them. I like totally open. Everybody can play. Anybody can win. Or you have to qualify to play and then win, earn your spot and then win. But I like it totally open, non-handicapped. But I do think there's a fair question to be asked: is there a place for U.S. tournaments only?
Well, the NBL is supposed to be that, right? If they can ever get it off the ground and get it started up, I mean, you have to be a U.S. resident to be in those. So you don't have to be a U.S. citizen, but you have to own a home in the U.S. So somebody like Thorsten Holman would be okay. Darren Appleton used to. Now he doesn't own his house in. He used to own it in Pennsylvania? Or was it Boston? Or Massachusetts? Whatever it was. He doesn't own that anymore, so he can't play in it. But I just wanted to jump in there. So that theoretically is starting up in the U.S. Mike, what do you think?
I think it's ridiculous. I think that listen, I watch a lot of tennis, and this was a reference on one of those posts, and I can see the idea of having seeds, but seeds based on ability, not based off of where you're from, right? I don't mind having rankings based off of where you're at in, let's say, Fargo or WPA or whatever it is you want to go and do, right? I can understand that. But that's based off of how great you play. If you want to go and seed those players in a tournament similar to how they do in tennis, I'm fine with that. But doing it just based off of, being an American or being, from a different country, I don't get it. I don't buy it. I don't while there's a lot more added money events going on right now, ask those promoters if they would want to have players from all over the world go and join in, and see if there would still be all those added money tournaments if it was just only American players that were allowed to go and play it. Because I got a good idea of what the answer would be, and I think he's completely naive or has his head under the ground if he thinks that it would still be the same way. Pool is thriving because of the amount of talent that's in it, and they want those players to come over and come to their venue or come to Vegas or come to Atlantic City to go and showcase the best of the best. And if you're not anymore, guess what? Father Time is undefeated. Step up your game. Ralph is still playing great. Ernesto Dominguez gave Omar hell playing 9-ball. There's a lot of players who are older who can still go and get there in a race to 9 format. And if you're not getting there consistently, then you're not putting in the effort consistently. That's my take on it. And I listen, and I'm not trying to be a jerk to Corey about it, and I guess I can kind of see it more or less where he's coming from because he's on tilt because he just lost or whatever, but it's ridiculous, plain and simple. There's other ways to go and figure out who the best American players are. I don't think Corey's in that mix at this point in his career. That aside, on an American level, then you include all the international talent, and I think that's why he's frustrated with it. Yeah.
All right, Dom, take us through it.
Got nothing new to add. I don't want to be redundant.
Yeah, so I guess I don't really either, but I want to approach it from a different stand and kind of see okay, so I don't disagree with exactly what you just said, Mike. I think this is coming from, first off, it should have been deleted immediately. It should have been deleted after a half hour because it is just sour grapes. I want to expand upon the idea that you said Ralph is still playing great. Ralph is playing so good. Ralph is, I'm going to get this wrong, 47, 48, something like that.
He looks 88.
Yeah, right. I think he's 47. Somebody out there in the comments can, fact check me. 47. Let's say he's 47. How many players in the U.S. can we name that aren't 47 that haven't had a career in 10 years or 5 years? Let's say 5 years, who used to be top players? John Schmidt, Rodney Morris, kind of Corey Deuel, right?
Wait, say that again? The top what?
Let's name all the players that are younger than Ralph Souquet who have not really had a career for 5 years in this industry, who are very, very top players at one point in time in the U.S. Those 3 players, right?
I think John's kind of an exception because John is taking interest outside of pool to where financially he doesn't have to go and do that. And whereas the players like Rodney were kind of just like, I think they were kind of just, okay, there's the door, because.
Okay, so Ralph Souquet is 52. Perfect. That's even better. But my point is, it doesn't matter why you're not in the industry. The point is that you're not in the industry where other players around the world, they still try to play, right? That we have so much wasted talent. Once you get to about 40, you just drop off a cliff, right? Like those players I just said, right? I mean, Mike DeShane is back playing again. That's great. But I mean, he took a long hiatus. Players like Dennis Hatch, Mitch Ellerman, players like this that had all the talents in the world, and they just get to the point where they don't compete at the top level anymore. They don't want to practice. My greater point here is American exceptionalism seems to be, if you can't compete at the highest level, either get rid of the people, and that's what I see as this post. Get rid of the people that you can't beat and just try to keep it as it is, which is kind of the handicap thing, which is exactly what Demetrius is talking about. Just get rid of the people that you can't beat and compete with the people you can, or just stop playing. So, right? I mean, how many people have done that in the last 10 years? How much of our top U.S. talent has just left the game in the last 10 years?
Okay, but Nate, so Fedor, by the way, I think his comment, he gives a voice. He says there should be a separate tournament for Americans, like the American Pro Tour. So here's the point. The idea is not to kick out international. And I'm not talking about Corey's idea. Corey's idea I'm not standing behind. But the idea of having the U.S. only player tournaments, the advantage to that, it wouldn't be about kicking out top international players so we don't have to get better. It would be about having a tournament tour to where top American players could compete, or top U.S. players could compete regularly, maybe even make some money, gain some confidence, win some events, and then also play international tournaments so that they're profitable and competitive on the state side, building confidence, building bankroll, so that they have a way to get to their best and deliver their best. That's all. I mean, is there a spot to have just U.S. only tournaments as well as international tournaments? That's the question.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. I don't see a reason why we couldn't.
No, that's a whole different. I agree with you, Demetrius. That's a whole different.
But that's not what I'm saying
right there.
So then I just want to make somebody had asked about why people don't like seeded, or why some people would be against seeded tournaments because top players have earned the right not to play each other. This is just my viewpoint, right?
Hold off on that because I want to talk about that more extensively in a little bit.
Okay.
I do want to bring that one up. I do want to bring that up. But my broader point is like, it seems like in the U.S., if you get to the point where you're no longer competing you're not beating everybody in your area, and you're not starting to compete at the national level, and you can like Justin Espinosa is at a perfect spot with this right now. Justin Espinosa is now at a point in his career where he's not dominating his area, but he's winning a lot, and he's doing really well. He's doing really strong, and he's ready to get into the box and get into those bigger events. And what you end up seeing is there's a lot of players that end up like kind of cycling through this, and they beat up on their area, and then they go into the national. And maybe it's just you're like a mid-sized fish going into a big old lake, and you see players like Fedor and you see players like Josh, who the game is just so easy to them, and you're sitting here grinding through the racks, and it's just so easy to them, and it's discouraging. And I'm not saying this can happen to Justin because I think he's got too much heart, but like there's a lot of players that they just get to this point and it just seems like they just give up and they just go back to selling cars or whatever players do, lay concrete. I don't know what the players do. The point is it just doesn't seem like the U.S. players have the heart to practice and compete, even when it goes through the grind of having to, compete again at kind of as like a reset of like the national level, as opposed to, just beating up on your area. It just seems like a lot of players just give up eventually instead of continuing to practice. That's all I'm saying.
So I know a few people that have gotten to be strong national level players that saw the gap between them and the top international players and just kind of, like you said, kind of aborted their journey. They just said, and it wasn't even about that's going to be too much work. I don't think it was that's going to be too much work. It was just I don't see how I can close that gap. Now, what I'll tell you though is when we talk about the European players, let's just talk about the European players for a minute, and we talk about them coming over and how they elevate their game and come over. But they didn't come over here and elevate their game here. There's a Euro Tour, and there's all the play. I mean, think of how many European players are playing and competing. The only people that, the ones that come over, Thorsten back when he was on top of his game, Shaw, now we've got Filler or Federer that spent a lot of time over here. You've got a handful of the top European players that come and like, we got good on European soil. Now we're going to come take the dead money in the U.S. And it's like we don't see the number. I mean, I know that it's pretty deep talent, but we don't see the number 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 guy come over and try to heist local tournaments. So it's like they play or play smaller U.S. tournaments. So it seems like they play like Fedor said, they play a Euro Tour, they play regional and countrywide and continental events over there, and then the top players that move over here, there's nothing to stop them. I welcome them, but. That's the reason that for the U.S. players, if the U.S. players had a U.S. tour to where they could make money and be successful and move up the ranks, and then all of a sudden our top five be stronger? Would our top five be able to then do better? Would we have better representation at the highest level if there was a place to go between 700 Fargo and 820?
I mean, at the end of the day, I guess my big point is, and I see the chat. A lot of people are saying that they leave the game because there's less money. I mean, yes, it's true, but I mean, I also see a lot of players who, if they're very smart with their money, they can, they're not off buying, racking up $200 bar tabs or whatever. Like, I get that there's not a lot of money in pool necessarily for that level of player. All I'm saying is, there's a reason the Asian players, the European players, the now Middle Eastern players, there's a reason there's here. There's a lot of money in pool in the U.S. The point is there's not a lot of money for the Americans because they don't make it deep enough into the tournaments. There's a reason all of the Filipinos are here as close to year round as they can get. There is money in pool. You just got to be good enough to get it. And our Americans just don't seem to be. Outside of Shane, Sky, Justin doesn't travel anymore. Billy can, get there every now and then. But besides Shane and Sky, I mean, there's Tyler Steyer is a perfect example. Tyler's very strict with his money. Tyler's very frugal with his money. You don't see Tyler cashing at these tournaments all that often, but he's still at every single one of them. So why is he able to do it but other players can't? If somebody can answer me that question, then I'll believe that there's no money in pool and that's why people have to leave.
Hold on a second, because I mean it's the long game in pool, but there's light at the end of the tunnel right now. Everyone just wants this fast food, I want it right now kind of way. It's just not the way it is right now. But there is a light. I'm not just saying that because I like what Matchroom's doing. I like what Omega Mike's doing. I'm not saying that because of that. I'm saying it because that's what I believe. That's what I see. But these guys have just been used to it for so long. Maybe they're jaded, right? And they don't want to go and do it, or I don't want to travel outside of my area, or I don't want to have to go and deal with all these a deeper field of players. And as great as Shane is, and Shane is great, remember this: Shane wasn't going to go to the Texas Open because Vegas was easier. So there's something to be said about being smarter when it comes to what tournaments you're in, right? So I mean, I can appreciate that side of the argument as well, but at the end of the day, listen, there's guys like the Filipinos, Jeff, and me and Jeff don't always get along, but he's giving up the 5 out playing 10 ball to a pretty solid player to go and get his piece of the pie. There's Tony entering in a rotation tournament with a stacked field full of players trying to get his piece of the pie when he's not considered a rotation player. So guys are getting creative in order to get their piece of the pie to keep on going. But sitting and bitching about it on social media ain't the way to go and do it, or to go and segregate everyone.
The only thing I want to say about Corey, though, is that I feel like the U.S. players were at the top of pool until, when Corey won the U.S. Open, or back in 2000 to 2004, Corey was right at the top of pool. When Shane came, he actually beat Corey to kind of take the top spot and in that race to 100. And ever since then, between Shane and then the international players, Corey's kind of went to second tier, and in the last 10 or 12 years, Corey's been second or third tier. But if you look at what he's done, he went back to work on his fundamentals. He started playing, snooker. He started playing international competition. He's went back to work on his game. So I just want to be fair. There are players, and again, I don't know the whole story behind Rodney Morris or other people, right? I just know that if you look at the U.S. players that were at the top of the game between 2000 and 2005, when Shane came and then the international players came and started dominating, most of the top U.S. players from 2004 exited the game. And, whether it was Danny Basovich, Mike Davis, whoever the top U.S. players were. But now you look at Corey. He's like one of the only guys I saw that said, I'm going to try to rise my game and continue to compete at the highest level. He raised his game, and he did try to continue to compete at the highest level. It just got too tough for him. So, I mean, he tried, man. He tried, and he didn't quit and whine about it. I just want to give him a little credit. He didn't quit and whine about it. He gave his best. It just wasn't good enough.
I don't know what Corey's work ethic is like before a tournament, but I can tell you it ain't like Tyler's is during the tournament. It ain't like Shane's is during the tournament, and it's not like Sky's is during the tournament. Okay, I can't tell you what work he's putting in before then, but those guys are playing all day long. They're practicing, and they're not just practicing 9-ball. Tyler's there practicing his 10-ball break. Dennis is there practicing his 10-ball break during a 9-ball tournament. They're playing pool all day long, 24/7. That's why they go deep. Tyler may not always get there, but Tyler's putting in the work to be that kind of player.
Absolutely. And I want to point this out too. Bill Goodman said Tyler is able to do that because he has a good sponsor. Sure, that's part of the job, right? I mean, you don't tell me that pool is just about winning tournaments, right? There's not enough money maybe in it for that. You got to have a good sponsor. And what do we all religiously say about Tyler Steyer? He is the exact consummate professional. He's always dressed for the occasion. He's always acting like he's supposed to on the table. He's always taking care of. He's going the extra mile, doing those junior boot camps, helping out the players whenever they can. He is somebody that the players or sponsors want to associate themselves with.
1,000%.
And I'm not going to go out there and dog on any of the older school players, but when I grew up, and I'm young, so Demetrius, you're a little older here. Why don't you tell me if I'm wrong here? Do you remember a lot back into the early 2000s, even into the early aughts, where you saw a lot of the big name professional players volunteer their time to do junior clinics for free? Is that something that you remember seeing a lot of?
What I think is, obviously, this has completely changed what we expect from our pros and what we think about as a pro and pros should be acting and how they should conduct themselves has totally changed. And I think a big part of that has been the internet, has been the ability, Facebook has been the ability to do things where like Matchroom, like Emily has said in the past, we don't just want performers. We want people that can market and connect with the audience. And I think that has changed what we expect from our pros. Fair. And so when we look at guys like Corey, not one of the reasons Corey's not putting in the work is that not only, he can't. His best days are behind him. He understands that. He's worked hard to make the end of his run as competitive as possible, but he's never going to have the same enthusiasm in his practice as a guy like Tyler, who still thinks that maybe he beats Fedor someday, for the number one spot.
And Tyler's got every reason in the world to get discouraged after what happened last year. Let's just be realistic. He had every reason in the world to be bitter and sour and say, "To the hell with this." And you know what? Me and him talked whenever all that Mosconi Cup drama had happened, and I said, "Man, just stay the course. You're doing a great job. You're a great ambassador. Just keep doing it. Stay focused. Stay motivated. Keep your eye on the site." And I think it's going to pay off. Justin ain't making the team this year. I'd be surprised if Tyler's not picked for Team USA this year. Mm-hmm. And listen, Nate, that's official. I talked to Emily today. Justin's out. So if y'all didn't know, y'all know now. He ain't playing. He's not in consideration.
Why would he be?
Well, he's canceled a bunch. No, he shouldn't. I agree with you 1,000%. But there's a lot of people who still think that he's still going to be a part of the team that he's got a chance to go and make it. But
I shouldn't even say that. I shouldn't even say that because I don't mean that. He should still be in consideration because I think he needs to be in consideration just because without him, we're in a lot of trouble. But yeah, look, before I fake cry on air anymore, I want to give a huge shout out to Billy Andrews Jr. Thank you as well for the stars. Really appreciate that. So I always want to get those in because I don't know. I want to be a star like Dom someday. So the more I get, the closer I get, huh?
I will say this, though, talking about the Tyler thing, I got to hang out with Tyler at the Texas Open a little bit, and what Mike alluded to he was on the table for 6.5 hours straight with no breaks, no cell phone usage or anything, just practicing for 6.5 hours straight. And I was there when it first started. Me and Mike posted pictures when they first started practicing, and then later on in the day, I was passing by to try to find something to do, and he's still sitting over there. I said, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing right now?" He's like, "I'm practicing." I said, "Come on, go eat, do something with your life. What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm practicing, man. This is what you got to do." And we talked about why he does that. So there was Shane told him, I don't want to give out too many of the details because I don't know if he wants it public, but Shane gave him an X amount of hours of how long it took for him to achieve the break. All right, the break was what he was referring to. And any habit in pool, he said it requires 3 days of 8 hours, and you'll get a concept. And every time you're practicing the same thing for 8 hours, you're going to get better and better and better if you continue to do that one thing. And so his practice regimen at home is 8 hours on the drill.
Do you take suggestions, Dom? Spend 3 days, 8 hours trying to figure out your internet connection.
I just have a hard time respecting somebody I play better than. It's hard to take lessons from somebody when I can give them the 8.
Well, my internet's better than yours, so you can take suggestions there.
Okay.
Can I give my opinion on the seated thing or not yet? Do you have any closing comments?
Let's branch into. Well, does anybody have any wrap-up discussions of that? I think we all kind of think it's a little. I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think we all kind of think it's sour grapes, and it's just the Omar situation probably sparked it, and next thing you know, he's posting that out there. Nobody thinks it's a really good idea, right?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So let's jump in with that discussion now, because I guess let's look at the broader world of sports. The three major. We're going to talk about the U.S. And Jim. You're such a handsome guy. We all know. So let's look at the four-ish major sports. We have football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. Right? Those are the four major sports in the U.S. Major, and the idea is you play a series of regular season events, a set schedule if you want, and then you finish with a playoffs or some sort of final tournament, which is seeded. Right? So that is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is like golf, right? All we're doing in golf is every single weekend you go into it. Everybody starts. You do 4 rounds. At the end of your 72 holes, you have a winner. That's a possibility. Is that 72? No. Yeah, 72 holes. You have your winner. You could also do it like I guess tennis, where every single basically event is seeded, and you are seeded based off of your world rankings. So I guess I just want to do that some context. Where do we really want to pigeonhole pool into, or do we want to do a combination of all three? Which do we think would be the best for building pool in the future? And Demetrius, go on, because I got a feeling that you're going to be able to talk to that.
I think that there's room for different things, right? So when it comes to things like the World Championship, if they want to seed it, you're talking about the best players in the world fighting for the biggest title in the world. Do what you want to do. I think that when it comes to, whatever. So my whole thing, and just to explain to somebody in the comments why I don't like when all the events are seeded, is that we've talked, everybody feels like they're in the no man's land, but what am I, 738 or something, Fargo? So it's like, for me, I don't play in my home state anymore. Everything's Fargo capped, handicapped, some combination of all, and it's all on a bar table. For me, I just have this one thing that I want in my life, which is what I had in the 90s and the 2000s. I like to be able to go into a pool tournament, play on a 9-foot table, and play even. That's what I want. If we had even 9-foot pool tournaments here in the Midwest, I would play them. Nate, when was the last time you saw a big table 9-ball tournament with no handicap in Wisconsin? Have you seen one in the last 5 years? Very rarely, right? They're all Fargo capped or bar table.
Whoa.
All right.
Your buddy won one.
Okay. So
but that was a U.S. Open qualifier, so it has to be, right? You can't do a handicapped U.S. Open qualifier. That'd be stupid, right?
So my whole point is that I don't play in my local state. I don't play in my region even. I like to go. I'm willing to buy plane tickets and airfare and pay an entry fee. I'm willing to be stuck $800 or $1,000 to play an event. I've got no chance of winning and very unlikely to even break even because the competition is so strong. That's how I feel when I go to Derby, Turning Stone, if I go to the Texas Open. There's all these tournaments I can go play. I'll be going to this Ohio Pro event here next month or whatever. But I don't want to handicap. I don't want to steal from. I don't want to go rob local small tournaments. I don't want to handicap from anybody better than me. I just like to go play even. And so when I have to go play where the top players are spread out, and then I have to play one of them first round and then play from the B side because I draw a top, an 810 player, half the tournaments I go to on the first round, that's fatiguing to me, man. I just want a chance. I want a chance to get a good draw, just like everybody else wants a chance. And so I guess I feel like there's room for seeded events that are being, like, if they're match room, big events, whatever, world championships, that's fine. But I'd like to be able to go play. I'd like to be able to go play Turning Stone. Derby. I love Derby. It's just a random draw. When I play Turning Stone or if I play the Texas Open, I don't feel like these are tournaments that ought to be seeded. I feel like I ought to get a fair shake. And anyway, so to answer the comments, where are my tournaments where I can play even? I just want to play. I don't want to handicap. I just don't want to give one up.
Mike? Oh, you missed this. So, Dom, why don't you take it over?
Yeah.
Just talking about seeding where we stand in the U.S.
Okay. So the idea is, in my mind, there's 3 types of tournaments. There are tournaments that are seeded all the way through. Tournaments like this would be boxing tournaments does it, as well as tennis tournaments, stuff like that, where Rafael Nadal is always going to have a top 3 seed whenever he plays at. Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer. Every single tournament is seeded. You get your first 3 matches against people who can barely hold a tennis racket, and then you start playing the real thing in the quarters. That is seeded on every single time. There's also tournaments, or there are also sports that do completely open pretty much, and that would be your golf. So at the end of 72 holes, whoever has the lowest score is the winner. Then you have kind of variations of it. Those would be like your 4 major sports where you do a series of events, which then gives you a ranking going into the playoffs where you have a separate tournament. So that'd be like football. You play an entire regular season to get your seeding into the playoffs, and then you finish out your final tournament to see who's the champion. There's 3 different kind of variations in my mind that I see as far as handicapping tournaments or not, or seeding or not seeding tournaments. Which do we think it would be the best for pool going forward?
When it comes to the pro events, I don't care for the seeding aspect or whether it is or not. I mean, if it's not seeded, the cream's going to rise to the top anyway. If you seed it, it makes it a little bit easier. If they play good, they're going to rise to the top no matter what. So I don't mind it either way. I'm good without it, honestly. And there's plenty of handicaps for the locals. Like Florida, we're huge into 600 and unders, 650 and under, 700 and under. But we also sprinkle. Yeah, in Florida, we have tons. I mean, we're literally running about, like last weekend, Florida did 8 tournaments in one weekend all across the state. I don't know why. That's just poor planning, which is where I step in and try to like help the state with organization as far as just communication with each other. I mean, stop, Mike. But I mean,
listen. If you don't like seeding, you ain't never seen March Madness. You ain't never seen March Madness. Go watch March Madness every year. You would listen if you're gonna have stories throughout a tournament. You just saw a 14-year-old kid go and knock out Shane out of the World Championships, right? So you'll if you go and just take all these people out or not have it be an open event. What am I lying?
I don't think he was 14, but I think he was like 20, wasn't he?
Well, how old is he? But
I think he's like 20.
Was he? Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's. But regardless, I get what you're saying. Well, the idea, so like the March Madness, what you're talking about, that would be like the major sports. So that'd be like the football, basketball. You play an entire regular season. Yeah. And how great would that be if we had like a regular tour? Like maybe what this, you know what? Predator, how perfect would this be? You play all 5 of their tours, and then you play the Puerto Rico Open or whatever the final event is, and the final event is seeded. And the only way that you can get into the final event is to play at least 3 of the 5 tour stops or whatever it is, and then the final's going to be seeded. Why not?
I would love that. That
would be awesome, right? But that only works if we have a tour. So the March Madness thing that you said, that'd be great, but it only works if there's a tour where you can actually gain points. The European Championships I thought would be awesome like this, but I don't. And Mike and Perhagen are both in there in the chats. They don't. The European Championships are not seeded, correct? I think the European Championships are a little bit different because I think you have to qualify for those.
Jim, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a great idea to see something like the Euro Tours, where after the 10th Euro Tour, they have Euro Finals where, you know, they take the top 32 players and they're seeded based off of the amount of points you get from the Euro Tours. If you win one, you get, I don't know, 20 points, and whoever has the most points by the end of all the Euro Tours gets the number 1 seed, and they play against the number 32 seed. Number 2 gets against the 31, something like that. I mean, I think it'd be fantastically popular to do something like that in the U.S., but it only works if there's the infrastructure in place to be able to do it. So
okay, there's a benefit of like rewarding the guys who have put in the work, like leading up to it. You know,
and then show up. Yeah.
Like yeah, for sure, of course. I mean, yeah, if you're not playing events or you're not traveling, then of course you got to go. I mean, I don't. Even the World Championships has qualifiers where you have monsters in there. Guys have gotten deep into those World Championships through qualifiers. You know, I think it was the year Ronnie won it. Maybe he had to go through a qualifier, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, it's just it's crazy to me, man. And there is some logic to the idea of it, but what Corey's saying is just it's at a level.
So this was there was a great comment about from wanting to start up. He said he started up Mike Gaines. I started a small weekly big table 9-ball open tournament. Never got more than 9 people to show up. So here's a question for y'all. Could we, if we suppose somebody tried to start a domestic U.S. tour? Nate, you talked about. I'll let you talk about what's going on, but could you get enough participation to even do that? Because if the answer is that none of the U.S. players will show up unless they're stealing, and I don't know, I mean, could you even have a tour that was a domestic tour?
Well, I see Ed Ladawi is out there, and I had this debate with him in the beginning, and he probably doesn't even remember it, but we bet a steak dinner that if so with the NBL event, basically you had 2 qualifiers for each location, 32 locations. You're going to get 64 amateur players, which are then going to be paired with 64 pro players, and it would all be a massive $200,000 prize purse national event that happens 4 times a year. And I have a steak dinner on it with him, basically saying that you cannot get 64 players from the U.S. to play in this, to post a $1,000 entry. No way. You can't do it. There's no way that there are 64 professional U.S. players that would post that kind of money, even if there is $200,000 on line. I just don't see there being enough participation from – because to do that, right, Demetrius, you're in the – are you just no, you're in the top 100 of the U.S. Yeah, you're comfortably in the top 100 U.S. players, right? You're like maybe in the mid 80s, something like that.
Yeah, I bounced from 40 to 80. Yeah, so I think a year ago I was like 30, and then I bounced, I don't know, 50, 60, 70.
Okay, so you're that
action.
high. Yeah. So
now you got me
the
curious.
idea is like to get 64 players in the top 80, one, you got to have, let's just assume that everybody has the weekend off. There's no weddings. There's no whatever. Let's just assume that everybody has the weekend available. Are you going to get Johnny Archer to show up for it? Are you going to get
Neight,
Nick Varner?
43.
You have to go with Johnny.
43, baby.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
just for you.
Easy.
I don't think Johnny's making that one.
Yeah.
But how about we use
well, Nick Varner, something like that, Ernesto Dominguez, like players like this that are, these players are in the top 100. A lot of them are in the top 20, right?
Nate,
but are they going to show up for an event?
I think if you've seen the post online and the pool is not dead where everybody posted like the top 5 of each state players in their state. I think it'd be if you did let's say a 700.
Were you number 2 or number 3 in yours, Dom?
What?
Were you number 2 or number 3 in Florida?
Unfortunately, I dropped off to number 4. But what? 4. I know. I gotta practice. But if you did something fair to where you wean out the Dominic Duns from entering, right? You don't want Dominic Duns in there. You don't want people who can't make 4 balls in a row. So you make it let's say a 7.
You covered that with Dom.
Or like a $700 entry, let's say, right? Dude, people in your state will support you if you're liked and you're not a douche, or I don't know what word I'm allowed to say politely, but
that's fine.
We'd love to see Maglino in the state of Florida, or Shearman, or we might even see Donnie Mills actually enter a tournament that's not Vegas or the U.S. Open. So I think there's 64 players out there for sure.
Well, the trick is you have to be above 720 Fargo.
Because I think 700 is the mark, but I think 700 opens it up for a bigger gap and money. Money's green, and they're not slouches. But Nate, I think the problem is we need somebody to actually do it. It's not that it won't be done. If you give a 3-month advance, a neutral location in the United States, where we negotiate a good hotel deal, flights right now are really cheap. It can be done. Nobody's doing it.
I know that I would play. I know that Josh would play. Yeah. Yep.
Well, Josh might not be able to. He's right around that 7. He's a little north of 720, right?
Yeah, but he'll be there soon enough. I mean, I don't know today. Now you got me curious, but he'll be there soon enough. He's playing well.
Last time I saw him, he was right around 718 or 720 or
just
something like that.
Just do an invite only. You just eliminate.
The thing is, you can't. So with the NBL's event is 64 players are amateurs. Those are under 720, and you have to qualify to get into this. And then 720 and over are the pros. So you have to get 64 players for over 720 that also have to live in the U.S.
I think that's just complicating, making way more labor involved for the TD. I think as the tournament director, as an A tournament director, I would just put 128 player field, or however you want it, invite only, eliminate the whole qualification, because now you got to manage 64 other tournaments or something, just do invite only. So you're weaning out when Dominic Dunn emails you and says, I want to play, I have $700 to burn because I hate Benjamin Franklin. You just say no, we don't want your talent there. We're going to go with people like Oscar.
Okay, so now we're getting into an entirely different subject, but I think you're completely wrong on that, because there's let me finish, because because players like me, I'm going up in Fargo again. I hate it because I just want to stay at 666 forever, but I'm stuck at 669 now. I'm going up, right? So I at the beginning of the year, I was right around a 660. I'm now to 670. The point is I have nothing to play for. What the hell am I playing for? I can't play in any tournaments in Wisconsin. Everything's a 545 and under, or a 480 and under, or it's a Scotch doubles 1100 and under, and I got to play with somebody with no arms and one leg to be able to play in that tournament. What do I have to play for? I have nothing to play for. This is actually something to play for. A qualifier, so that I can actually have something on the radar, on the map for me, where I can look at it 4 times or 8 times a year potentially and say, that's a tournament that I can play in. That's a tournament that's going to keep me motivated to play. If I'm now losing that as an opportunity, we're back in the same spot we're at right now, where players like me are not going through the process of continuing to get better, so that I could be a 720 or I could be a 740 someday. I'm old and I'm dying soon, so I'm never going to get there anyways now, but there's no reason that at my age of 29 that if I trained like my butt off for the next year, there's no reason I couldn't be a 730 player.
Yeah, I think where my misunderstanding is that I don't have experience with.
I 12.
I don't have experience with we're not seeing open events. Florida has open events. So, I don't know what it feels like to not have a tournament that you can play in.
Yeah, we don't have any.
So
we have about one every 6 weeks.
I didn't mean to spark you and get you salty.
Yeah, and Dominic,
I'm triggered.
I just, as far as the complexity, I'll speak to the complexity because Ed's talking about nobody wants to sign up. Tell me your concern. You've run a lot of tournaments down in Florida. Tell me about your reaction to the qualifier and what you were hearing from Neight. You were saying that's a little too complex. Right.
Yeah, I just think you can fill it without that.
So for me, I'll just tell you as a player, I don't follow a lot. I just I'm training full, and then I'm looking at some tournaments I can go play, and if there's a tournament where I can sign up, put up my entry fee, and go play, I'll do it. When it starts getting to be this is a qualifier for that, and this is for that. I know Josh, he's a 7-11. I don't know if he's going to go play a qualifier to try to get in to play some other event. But if it's just something where we can just go sign up and play, I'm sure he and I would be down to sign up and play. That's the only thing. Now where it'll come, and where Ed, you're talking about people aren't going to play, pay $150 to enter a qualifier. If the tournament that you would have qualified for, if guys like me and Josh are sitting back playing our other tournaments, right? Now I'm going to be playing the Texas Open next year. I promise you that. I've got my own lineup of tournaments I'm going to play. If I started seeing every 3 months or every 6 months, man, I'm missing out on these tournaments, all these great events. What do I got to do to get into that? I got to play these qualifiers, or I got to sign up. All right, I'll look at Josh and we'll be like, why aren't we playing that thing? But that has to happen first. We have to want to play in that event before we're going to go play in that event. As it is, if it's just something I can sign up for, I'll sign up for it. But if it's a qualifier or anything more complicated than that, I'm just telling you, I think that's a deterrent. And so you can't say that reflects U.S. players' lack of interest. I think it's more just, it's you have to earn that kind of following, I think.
Yeah. Well, part of it's marketing, right? I will say the only counter example I was able to come up with for you, Demetrius, was the tournament that Josh snapped off, which was a qualifier.
Yeah. But that's a U.S. Open. But that's a U.S. Open qualifier where we're hey man, we're gonna play that thing. We went out there, Josh took it down, and now I'm rooming with him, so I get half his action and the free room.
Speaking of which, can I crash with you? I'll let you sleep on the floor if you want. I'm gonna be out
sorry,
there.
The internet's cutting out a little bit. But yeah, you can back me as well. Yep.
All right. So I guess what we're coming to a conclusion with this is the U.S. needs some infrastructure, right? Is that literally what we can all agree on?
Yes.
The European tour, they come over here, they take all of our money, they take all of our dead weight money, and then they go back to Europe and spend all of it on Russian vodka and French wine.
But I will say to Fedor and to anybody that's listening, I'll tell you, the alternative would be that they don't come over, and then we wouldn't have a chance to spar against the best players in the world. So I'm grateful that they're here for sure.
Yep. Well, we're kind of at a crossroads with the U.S. We can start kicking out. We become nationalistic and start kicking out everybody who wants to play pool, or we can practice more. How about that? Wouldn't that be great? Isn't that a weird concept? What do we think about that? That's okay. Yeah.
Let's go do it. You got me. Let's go practice.
Well, I guess
the matchroom team
of,
and Emily want to go and want to have a tournament. I mean, they want to have a tour in place where these guys can go and earn their spot based on their own merit, where they'll still have wild cards for coaches or captains or whatever to go and pick to, but that's what they want, so that way all this talk of favoritism and all this other BS gets thrown out the window and players can just go and play and make a little bit of money too.
Yeah. In an ideal world, we'd all have it. But a lot of that stuff takes a lot of hard work, and there's only a few people that are stepping up to do it. And, we'll see. So I guess we were going to talk a bunch about the 9-ball as well at the Texas Open. Let me just run down quick. I guess the places there. We don't have to talk too much unless there's anything that you guys want to talk about. Shane Van Boening snaps it off again, beats Dennis in the finals. It doesn't get double dipped by Dennis in the finals. That's always good to see. Roland Garcia gets third place. How is Roland playing these days? He's crushing it, man. He's doing real well. I mean, he needs a shout out. Roland Garcia is playing some awesome pool. Sky Woodward gets fourth. Tony Chohan, Jeffrey Ignacio, awesome for Tony. That is great to see. A one pocket player out there grinding. Amazing to see. Jesus Intencio, Nayuki Oi get 7th, 8th. 9 through 12th goes to John Mora, Carlo Beato, Edgy Geronimo, and Evan Lunda. That's a pretty great tournament for Evan Lunda too. Wow. 13 through 60, Omar Al-Shaheen, Kunlin Wu, Chris Reinhold, Manny Chow. And then we'll do 17 through 24th, John Gabriel, Scott Frost will give the highlights. James Aranis, Tyler Steyer, Blaine Barkis, and there's some monster names that we didn't even announce there. So pretty good tournament. So there's a lot of monsters in this. It was a fantastic event from what I heard. Ran smoothly. Got done a little bit late on Sunday, but they finished it in time. And I guess any final words from anybody? Anything anybody wants to talk about before we wrap up?
For me, it's just a matter of how good seeing some of these guys are playing right now. John Mora, Roland Garcia, the Filipinos are back in Chua and Ignacio, and they're playing stellar. It was such a deep event, and the standard of play was just really fantastic. And it wasn't that goofy 1 on the spot 9-ball with the template. They were playing that 9 on the spot, and you had to have a 3-point roll, so it made for some randomness and some very exciting matchups. Shane worked his ass off before he was playing the event. He just gotten done an Ironman match with Dennis, and he worked his ass off there at the event too. He was always practicing his break, always there hitting balls. His work ethic is something to be inspired by. And no, it was a fantastic week of pool, man, from start to finish. But the rotation, it's great, man. It's wide open. It's wide open right now.
So I guess one thing, and I feel like Shane has earned this. I don't want to say that I've been on Shane a little bit in the past, but I kind of have, basically saying that he's not quite there anymore. He's not on that top tier. Is it unreasonable to say that Shane is actually the best player in the world right now?
We'll find out soon.
I mean, he did lose to Dennis recently in that big table 9-ball, but that's also Dennis not wanting any of that smoking 10-ball. If they run it back, Shane loses by single digits in the 9-ball. They run it in 10-ball. Shane's beating him by 50.
No.
Is it unreasonable?
Well, relax. I don't think it's 50, but
it was 30.
It's up there. I say he ain't beating him by 50.
Oh, I guess I'm talking.
Sure.
I'm talking one. I'm talking about the bar table 10-ball. He won by 57.
Yeah. Bar table, yeah. Touch me in big table. Sorry.
But even big table race to 150. What does he win by? 40, 30?
Relax, buddy. Okay, because if it ever happens, you're gonna kill the action. All right, relax.
So I mean,
don't tap the glass.
Look, I mean, it's easy to go and say he's the best player, and the quality of players that were there were fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but there's a whole bunch of guys who are coming over right now, and a bunch of guys who are still at home right now who could go and give Shane Josh. So yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, and how consistent is Al been playing, right? In any event, in any event, how consistent is he playing? So there's a number of guys who can go and give Shane hell in any game, but I guarantee, like, I don't think anybody has the effect, but maybe Dennis, but besides Dennis, I don't think anybody has the intimidation factor right now like Shane does. Players that are great go and play Shane, and they're like, oh crap, it's Shane.
Well, what you said earlier about his one pocket, and Jim Telfer just said in the chat here is, it's about motivation, and that when he's motivated, nobody has to like it, and that's basically what you said about the one pocket too. Like, I think that if Shane were to get in the box and play a race to 100 big table 10 ball, and he's hungry to play that match, like. There's guys that can play him. It'd be very fun, of course, to see those matches we want to see, right, with Filler or with Federer. But nobody has to or Chang. Nobody has to think that they're stealing. But the thing about it is, in a tournament where it's wake up, play a morning match, and then play an afternoon match, and you're playing all these races to 9 or races to 11 where he's considered this, everybody expects him to win every match, or he's supposed to be this heavy favorite and the best in the world, but he's playing this never-ending sea of 793 Eurobots that are coming over here and just trying to earn their spot. And consistently, match after match, he's not delivering the same level of fight that like an Albin or a Clenty Kachi is. But you want to pick one match and play for all the marbles and make it an extended cage fight, he's got to be there in the consideration with anybody. And that's kind of what I've seen is that his tournament game, I don't think he's going to dominate tournaments for that reason. I think it's hard for him to maintain his intensity round after round, match after match, weekend after weekend. But when you look at like the biggest tournaments in the world or the longest matches, I think that you're still going to see some representation.
Yeah. I agree with Mike. I agree with Mike Pinoza there too.
Demetrius is right. It's whenever he wants it. If you piss off Shane and if Shane's got a chip on his shoulder, watch out, because he's going to do everything he can to go and get there. And everyone's going to go and feel that heat. But I don't think anyone's playing as consistent as he is. Maybe Albin right now, but just as consistent as Shane is, I don't think anybody is right now.
Yeah. I agree with Mike Pinoza there too. I don't think that there's any Europeans really that come over and rob the place, right? Josh a little bit, Fedor a little bit, Jason a little bit, but it's mostly the Filipinos that are still taken from the U.S. pots, right?
Well, they got to start playing each other. Filler and Josh Filler and Fedor would be a great matchup. Kachi and Fedor would be a great matchup. They're gonna have to start playing each other. If they're gonna want to be. If not, they can just stay Mosconi Cup teammates, and that's all fine and dandy and all. But I can't. After seeing all these guys go and get in the box the way that they do and grind out the way they do and getting bad games or whatever the way they do, like, that has to be taken into consideration if you want to, not just snapping off, a tournament. At least not for me anyway. You were great for that weekend or for those 3 days or whatever, but I guarantee you, Albin wouldn't want any part of Shane in the box.
Maybe 9 ball.
Albin's a world champion.
Maybe 9 ball.
Gambling? Show me someone who's gonna go put up that money.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's all the topics I want to talk about. Anybody else have anything? Well, that sounds like a podcast then. We did it. At this time next week, Mike, we're going to be sitting probably in person doing a podcast.
Vegas. I got all my stuff. We're packing up tonight. We're leaving first thing in the morning. I'll see you in a few days, Nate. Thank God I don't got to see this ugly guy for a few days. Demetrius, hopefully we get to have you on while we're in Vegas too, buddy.
Sounds good.
Well, there you have it. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and please share the show if you have not done so already. Help us grow. This is the best way that we can do it. We've been averaging right in between 50 and 60 viewers for this entire time between all of the forums, and we would like to grow that and help get the word out for all of Pool. So please, if you're enjoying this, watching, the easiest thing that you can do to help us out is just share the stream. You never know who might be watching. You never know who might be a new follower or a viewer from there. So please do that. And I guess until next week, we'll be live in person from Vegas. So see you guys all next week.
All right. Next time, guys.
See you, boys.